we saw what happened regards the Premier League title race. We saw Liverpool comfortably see off Manchester City 2-0 to go 11 points clear at the top of the table. And we saw Arsenal, somewhat surprisingly, losing at home to West Ham United. So, as a result of those results, is this now a title race that has lost all jeopardy? Is it now just a case of just how big a gap might Liverpool win this Premier League by? This was Arne Slot post-match.
I've said many times it's so hard to judge the league table before every single game is played, because the person that asked me this this after the Villa game, and in my opinion, Villa away and City away are two very difficult games. So you can drop points over there, and for example, Arsenal already played those two games, so it's hard to judge it. But we are in a good position. But we also know how hard it was for us to win against Wolves. Now we play Newcastle. We played 3-3 over there, which was, in my opinion, also a good result. Although after 89 minutes we were 3-2 up. But we also experienced how difficult that one is. So in every other league, having a lead like this would be very comfortable, except for this one, because this league, every single game gives you a lot of challenges. Even Plymouth Argyle gave us a lot of challenges.
Yeah, in any other league, this would be a comfortable league, but not this one. The thing is, Martin, 7 of Liverpool's remaining 11 come at Anfield, and they've yet to lose away from home in the league.
Yeah, it looks as if it's
done, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty well done, Jim. We're not done in the congratulations period yet, but Liverpool have been quite magnificent. If you look at their recent performances, Jim, I think in the month of February, it was looking tough. They had 8 fixtures to negotiate. They beat Bournemouth at the start of that, which now is becoming, isn't it, away at Bournemouth, becoming really one of the most difficult fixtures. They beat Spurs. They went out the FA Cup, which was, I understood it, that they had to rest virtually everybody for that game, and they sacrificed that a little bit, went out of that competition. And then what they've done since, looking at the 3 games, Newcastle still to come, of course. In a week, you go to Villa Park, you get a draw, and you beat Man City away, 2 away games. To come away at 4 points is perfect for them. I think it got a little bit, there was a bit of anxiety in the Wolves match when Arsenal got close with 4 points behind after their draw against Everton, but that's only a human reaction. But they looked certainly magnificent yesterday in their performance.
So it's all but done and dusted, isn't it, Simon? It's
yeah,
Liverpool's
I mean, they're
now.
home and host, aren't they, really?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a side that's got to lose 4 games out of the remaining 11, that's lost 5 out of the last 76. Unless they're going to have a sort of fall off the cliff moment, which I don't think they're going to. And the Plymouth Argyle analysis was because you changed the whole team, Arnie, and put out a group of young players to give them an opportunity, and you sacrificed the FA Cup because you've got a potential treble of the League Cup, the Champions League and the Premier League, and the FA Cup was your sacrifice.
Yeah.
Us that worship the FA Cup and think it's a valuable proposition would perhaps think that's something to be considered, but the fact of the matter is Liverpool are going to win their 2nd Premier League title in 32 years.
So we get to it, Martin, and this is the thorny question for any Arsenal invincible. But what has been Arsenal's biggest undoing this season? Lack of discipline or injuries?
Yeah, I think a combination of the two, Jim. I don't think you can really pick out one above the other. I think the suspension thing, of course, there's been a lack of discipline in that area, but we can go through all 5 of the sending offs if we want to drag it all back, all the way back to Rice and Trossard and Saliba. I think the one at the weekend was definitely a sending off. I think some of the others you could argue that they weren't, Jim. But these, in those games, I think Arsenal only won 1 match. So you're losing points in the games you get down to 10 men. Then you've got your suspensions. I think it was critical when they lost Ødegaard very early in the season. He was out for 2 months, and then you've had this catalogue of injuries. The 4 front players not available, and at the weekend it was there wasn't that explosive pace in the team. It was flat. It was a difficult. West Ham played very well, Jim, but they sat deep, and Arsenal didn't have the answers, didn't find the solutions in the final third. You can say they need a striker, but there was not enough opportunities created for, even if they did have a striker at the weekend. So that's where they're going to have to pick up. It wasn't the precise play, Jim, that you've seen with Arsenal so much this season.
And I mean, an FA Cup in his first season, but will Arsenal win anything again with Arteta?
We'll have to wait and see. I think it's just a case of building. You've got to look at, if we compare Liverpool, for instance, and Slot's come in and done a really good job, Jim, but you have to see where they've come from. Do you know, Klopp was building this club over many years. He still has 5 or 6 players in the team. I mean, 3 of the back 4 have been champions. They've got Salah as well. the other players that he inherited this time last year were still top of the table. It was a kind of a unique situation. Klopp had almost had enough. And it was maybe it gone a bit crazy, Klopp. Whereas now this new manager's come in and settle it all down. Arteta's had to build a club up for 5 years. You know, a team that wasn't in the Champions League.
But that's quite a while, isn't it?
It wasn't in a team that was in the Champions League for over 6 years. Arsenal, you've have been first and second the last 2 seasons. I think what clouded the issue a little bit was the last 16 games of last season, they won 14 of those, and they scored 53 goals. And maybe it was like, okay, well, we got enough, but they're scoring goals from all angles. It became apparent that you needed as kind of a fox in the box, someone, an out-and-out scorer. The last 16 games have just been on, Jim. They've only lost one, as we say, at the weekend. They've drawn far too many of those, and they haven't been on the same prolific run as they were last year.
I mean, building can only go on for so long, can it not, Sam?
Yeah, I mean,
you've got to turn it into something.
Yeah, I mean, as long as people see progress, they can accept that you don't win things, and it's difficult to see whether the real argument is about progress this season for Arsenal. I mean, you still got to. I mean, West Ham are no world beaters. There's a reason why West Ham are 16th on the table. So they're not a prolific side. You were losing against them before you went down to 10 men. It's ironic how the world of football turns, isn't it? There was questions about this young man a week ago about the arrogance of emulating someone else's celebration, and a week later he gets himself sent off. I'm just saying how football sometimes works. It's a great leveller at times. I think Arsenal, you know, the biggest loss for me with Arsenal is Saka. I think he is the biggest threat that Arsenal have. He creates the dynamic that makes Arsenal such an effective side. This argument will rage about players that they could have bought and should have bought. There's still enough in that side. I mean, you're not looking at West Ham and going, they've got a bunch of prolific goal scorers up front. Yet they were still winning this game when Arsenal had 11 players on the field. It's not ideal. It's not ideal that you've lost your best part of your strike force, as it was a strike force.
There's Scott sending in a message. Guys, Arsenal have a result like this in them. Even when Saka was fit in previous seasons or wasn't playing.
West Ham did that last year as well.
They're simply just not a winning team. I mean, that certainly is harsh. I mean, can you see them winning the Champions League, Martin?
Well, they've got Martinelli and Saka possibly to come back, and they need them back quickly, Jim, because you do need that. Your goal scorers give you that feeling, don't you? You know, we had the likes of Henry and Bergkamp. They give you that feeling. If you hang on for long enough, you can get the goals that you need. Jim, it's been interesting in the club. There's been no excuses. No one's pointing to players that are injured. It's a case of, look, they could have been better at the weekend. All round, they could have been better. And they left themselves exposed the other end. Kudos was a handful, running into channels. Bowen coming from deep, should have been picked up. So you need to be looking at that. They can do more, and they're going to have to between now and the end of the season.
But why wasn't more done for Arteta? I mean, the supporters will continue to ask, why did they choose not to strengthen in January?
I think they tried, Jim, and I think pretty certain there'd be a top international centre-forward coming in at the start of next season. If
well,
not,
it has to be, but it's too late by then.
Yes,
especially if they don't win
that's
the Champions
right,
League.
but how do you plan then for 4 players getting injured like that? So if Saka gets injured, Jota gets injured, Diaz gets injured, and Nunez, do you say, right, okay, Liverpool were at fault for they didn't have enough strikers, they didn't have enough front players? Because that's effectively what's happened to Arsenal.
But the question
it's hard to plan for that.
You can compare and contrast all day.
And that's a good point. But there's been this debate about Arsenal and their decision-making processes around a centre-forward. And Havertz has come on for a lot of flack about how prolific a player he is. He's a very good player in certain people's minds. I think he's okay, but I certainly don't think he's a centre-forward. So the argument is compounded by the fact that Arsenal didn't buy a centre-forward and they've got a makeshift centre-forward in Havertz. I think they're unlucky. I think they probably would have gone earlier if Jesus hadn't got injured in January. They might have gone earlier, or they might not have gone full stop, because they probably thought that, Gabriel Jesus owes them something. He can step up. He scored 5 goals against Palace in 2 games. Maybe he'll provide us with a solution. And then, of course, they got the injury, and then they had to react to the injury. So it wasn't a case of Arsenal sitting on their hands. Arsenal probably had made a decision that they were going to go with Jesus. And then he gets injured in the middle of January, and then they've got to react.
But they publicly went for Watkins, and then it turns out they were never really going to get him.
Well, he was a 29-year-old player, Jim. Though you're putting a lot of money on the table, aren't you, for a player of, what was it, 50 million in the end?
Would he have helped you?
Yes, but he picks up he wouldn't have been available for the first 2 games. He picked up a groin injury in his last game for Villa, didn't he, around that period?
But what would have been a better option up front, Watkins or Marino?
Well, obviously you want to recognise, it's like having a scrum half in rugby.
There you go.
You want a centre forward, if you ideally.
Yeah.
So I think it feels like Arsenal have got one arm tied behind their back without having the necessary players in the front. But Jim, what we did at the end of last season was what clouded the issue when you go 16 games, you win 14 of those, and you score 53 goals from all manner of positions, there's a collective feeling that that was going to be good enough. And they backed those players. They didn't block that path, and they didn't bring another striker in. Obviously, it's unfolded that they probably should have done.
Do you think, Simon, do you still believe success will come in this Arteta project?
Depends. I mean, if the ultimate success is winning the league, you've also got to look at the opposition. And Liverpool have been fantastic this season. No one expected Liverpool to be as good as they were. They all expected City to be the dynamic. City have fallen away, and Arsenal still haven't been able to take advantage of the opportunity. I don't know. I mean, I think Arteta has made Arsenal better, undoubtedly, and the culture of Arsenal has changed for that period where Wenger was treading water for a variety of reasons. He was put in difficult positions, and the exit of Wenger was a slightly undignified exit. Emery wasn't really taken to. He was hounded out the door. You got the vociferous fan base that are getting unhappy through their TV models and so on and so forth. And then Arteta's changed all that. And he's brought a culture at Arsenal which is much better. But in the end, he has to win something. And he's won one FA Cup in his first season against Chelsea and not anything else.
I think sometimes I think Arsenal do get a bit of a hard time. When Newcastle come into the big time and they make it into the Champions League, and then the next season they fall out of the top four. Everyone says, well, it's very difficult, the demands, everything. Arsenal still come second. In fact, finished the season even better than they did before. This year, only their second year in 6 years they're in the Champions League. I don't see them falling away like Villa are. Villa are 8th right now, and we can give those sorts of teams, give them. But Arsenal don't get any sympathy for that, do they? They're still in the top 2 right now. So, they are making progress, but they have to build this squad.
We're agreed they're making progress. We're agreed they're making progress. But when's it going to turn into anything?
Well, I don't know. I haven't got a crystal ball, have I?
We'll put it out to the Arsenal fans this morning. An FA Cup in his first season. Will Arsenal win anything again with Mikel Arteta? How do you honestly feel at this precise time? Do you still believe success will come in the Arteta project? That's the bottom line. You're in it to win it, aren't you?
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.